There's a drawer in our hospital morgue that's been locked for 12 years. Not because it's broken, not because it's out of order, but because of what happened the last time we opened it. The administrators don't talk about it. The day shift pretends it doesn't exist. But those of us who work the night shift, we know better. We know that some secrets are locked away for a reason, and some doors should never be opened again. My name is Ruth. I'm 58 years old, and I've worked the night shift at St. Alora's for nearly 30 years. I've rolled more gurneys down this hallway than I care to count. The new nurses call me Morgue Mom because I keep the fridge stocked and tell the interns when not to touch the bodies. You don't last this long in this job by being soft. You learn not to get emotional. You learn the quiet rituals, how to zip a bag without catching the hair, how to whisper an apology when the eyes are still open, how to forget a name by sunrise. But some names don't let you forget. It started about 12 years ago. Drawer 3C had been locked since before I started. It's always been locked. Technically it shouldn't be. We rotate storage based on toe tag sequence, not drawer number. But 3C, we just skip it. We tell the new staff it's jammed, and most don't question it. But I did, once. That year we lost a janitor named Evan. Good man, showed up early, left late, always whistling in the hallways. One morning, I found him standing in the morgue, staring at 3C. His mop had left a long streak of pink water across the tile. I asked if he was okay. He didn't answer, just pointed at the drawer and whispered, "They're saying a name." I asked who. He didn't blink. It's a boy's name, real soft, like they're remembering it wrong on purpose. A week later, Evan didn't show up for his shift. They said he'd quit, moved in with his sister upstate. But I found his badge on top of 3C, like someone had placed it there, deliberately. I pocketed it and didn't say a word. I started hearing it a few nights after that. I'd be prepping a body, alone, humming some tune, just to keep the quiet from pressing in, and then soft as a breath, I'd hear it. A name. It never came all at once, like someone calling out. It arrived in pieces, sometimes just the last syllable, a sigh of breath between draws, sometimes a full whisper, always the same name. I didn't recognize it, so I checked our logs. No patient, no death certificate, nothing. But the more I listened, the more familiar it became. Not from the hospital, from a story an old nurse told me once. Years ago, during a slow night, we were swapping war stories, and she mentioned a stillbirth, a bad one. The mother had come in too late. Baby never made it. No birth certificate filed, no death paperwork either. Back then things got missed. Records were paper, and grief didn't always follow protocol. She said the baby had been placed in 3C just for the night. It clicked then, the name I'd been hearing, the same one she'd whispered that night, like it hurt to say it aloud. I don't want to write it down. I won't say it here, but once you hear it, it clings to your memory like static, soft, simple. It sounds like a lullaby. One night, I decided to check, not open it, just look. I brought the master key, the one only 2 people in the whole hospital have. I waited until everyone else was upstairs and turned off the hallway light so the security cameras wouldn't catch the full angle. My hands were shaking before I even touched the handle. The key didn't want to turn, not in a mechanical way. It just resisted, like it didn't belong anymore, like the lock had rusted around the name inside it. I turned it anyway. The drawer didn't slide open all the way, just a few inches, enough for the cold to pour out like fog. I didn't see a body, just a pale linen cloth, aged and brittle, folded into a perfect square. On top of it, a pacifier, the old kind, rubber nipple, plastic ring, yellowed with time. I closed it, locked it again, and I never tried to open it after that. But that name, it followed me. Sometimes when I sleep during the day, I hear it in my dreams, not shouted, not screamed, just whispered, like someone standing behind me. Once, I woke up saying it out loud. I was alone, but the room still felt full, like the name had brought something in with it. It's been 12 years now. I've kept drawer 3C locked ever since. The key stays in my locker, wrapped in gauze, buried beneath a stack of old training manuals. I've never told anyone else what I found, what I heard. They'd say I'm tired, or grieving, or confused. Maybe I am, but there's something I can't shake. A few weeks ago, a new nurse asked me if we had drawer space for an unclaimed body. I told her to skip 3C. She looked confused and said she'd already checked it, said it was empty. I asked if it was locked. She said no, it had been slightly open when she arrived. I checked later, it was locked tight. Now I wonder if I dreamed the whole thing, or maybe I dreamed locking it again, and it's still open now waiting. I've heard the name every night this week, clearer than ever, like it's getting braver or closer, and last night, just as I was falling asleep, I whispered it back. I didn't mean to. It just came out, soft and automatic, like breathing, like something inside me had finally remembered it, and wanted to say it gently, just once, before morning. But morning didn't help, because I woke up with the pacifier on my nightstand. I live alone. I locked every door, and still, it was there, yellowed and warm, like someone had held it all night. So now I sleep with the hallway light on, and a chair under the doorknob. I don't close my eyes for long, because I know if I hear that name again, if I whisper it a second time, it might whisper mine back. You wouldn't think a sink could sound like a heart, but that's what it is. That low, wet thump that comes when the faucet shuts off. The kind of sound that makes your chest tighten before your ears even catch it. I thought I was imagining it at first, just fatigue or the plumbing acting up again, but it kept happening. Soft, rhythmic, like something was still alive in the walls, pulsing just beneath the morgue floor. My name is Jenna. I'm 42, and I've worked trauma and post-mortem at St. Alora's for nearly 20 years. I used to joke that I'd bleed out before they ever fired me. They still laugh when I say that, but I don't say it anymore. Not after what happened at that sink. It's the one in the far corner of the autopsy room, the old metal basin where we rinse our tools and scrub out trays after a case. It's stained pink, permanently, like the blood got into the pores of the steel and made a home there. No matter how hard we scrub, it always looks used. We keep telling maintenance it doesn't drain right. They snake it, pour acid, even replace the pipe once. Still the water backs up, still it groans when it drains, like it doesn't want to let go. It started with the noise. After the last rinse of the night, just as the water stopped running, thump, not loud, not sharp, just a thick wet pulse. I thought it was the pipes shifting, maybe air trapped somewhere, but it didn't happen with any of the other sinks, just that one, just at night. Then came the pattern. Every shift, same time, 2:37 a.m. That's when it would start. The thump, then a pause, then another, like a slow, dragging heartbeat. I timed it once, 56 beats per minute. Too slow for a human, but not by much. I mentioned it to the others. They laughed. One of the interns said it was probably just the morgue, trying to keep itself alive. I smiled, but I didn't laugh. The second thing was the blood. Not fresh, not even wet really. Just a faint tint in the water, after every rinse, even when I hadn't used any tools. I'd run clear water through the sink, and it would come out tinged, like the metal itself was remembering. One night, I was working alone. Late autopsy, car crash victim, early 30s, no family, DOA, nothing unusual. I finished the procedure, logged the time, wheeled the body back to storage. When I returned to clean, there it was, a toe tag in the sink. I hadn't used one. We'd gone digital a year ago. I picked it up. It was damp, faded, but the name, I recognized it. It was a patient from 5 years ago. A man died in my unit after a cardiac arrest. He'd coded 3 times. I had worked the crash cart, called the time myself. The memory hit me like cold air. I remembered the way his hand had fallen off the gurney, the way I'd looked away just for a second because I was exhausted, and the chart. I'd altered the timestamp just by a minute, just to make it cleaner. No one noticed, but I remembered, and now 5 years later, his tag was in my hand. I dropped it. It slid down the drain, slowly, like it was resisting. The water in the basin shivered, then pulsed again. Thump. I went home early that night, told them I was coming down with something. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that tag floating in blood. I heard the code alarm. I saw his eyes, not panicked, just disappointed, like he'd expected more from me. The next night, I avoided the sink, made excuses, asked someone else to clean up, but the sound followed me. I heard it from the hallway, through walls, in my locker, that slow dragging pulse. Thump, thump. I started dreaming in red, not nightmares exactly, just red, thick and slow, like syrup poured over tile, the kind of red that feels warm even when it's not. In the dreams, I'd be walking through the morgue, and every drawer would be open, and every body would have my name pinned to their toe. The final night, I stayed late again. I had to. The supervisor asked for an extra hand on a double patient shift. I didn't want to be near the sink, but avoiding it only made it worse. I started shaking around 2 a.m. By 2:30, I couldn't breathe. I walked into the autopsy room, drawn to it like I was following a voice. The sink was empty. Clean, too clean, no stains, no residue, just chrome and stillness. I leaned over it, heart pounding, trying to catch my breath, and then the faucet turned on. Not fully, just a drip, slow, measured. I tried to shut it off, but the handle wouldn't budge. The drip turned to a trickle, then the water ran full force. Red, bright, hot red. It coated the basin, flowed down to the drain, and thumped. I looked down, and for the first time, I realized the sound wasn't in the pipes. It was coming from beneath, deeper, like something was buried under the floor, something that used to have a pulse and still wanted one. I don't remember running, just the slam of the door behind me, my hands slick, my chest heaving like I'd outrun something huge and slow. They sent me home after that, gave me a few weeks of mental leave, said I was overtired, said trauma nurses sometimes internalize grief. Maybe that's true, but I never told them about the tag, or the blood, or the name that printed on a report slip 2 days later. My name Jenna C. Bates. Time of death, 2:37 a.m. Cause, cardiac failure. Body held for review. I found it in the print tray on my first day back. No one had typed it. It wasn't in the system, but the timestamp was exact. I burned it in my sink at home. Now I avoid the autopsy room. I train interns in paperwork, inventory, anything but cleaning. The new staff use the sink. No one's complained yet, but every once in a while, one of them asks about the red stain, why it always comes back after bleach, why the drain seems to breathe. I just smile and tell them it's the oldest part of the morgue. Old pipes make strange sounds, but I still count the seconds between the drips, still wait for that faint, terrible thump. And sometimes, when I'm brushing my teeth or washing my hands, I hear it through my own drain at home. 56 beats per minute, like something far below the concrete, buried beneath all my years of silence, is still waiting for me to slip, still trying to remember the rhythm of my guilt. They say reflections are just light bouncing back, nothing more. A trick of angles and surfaces. But sometimes, when I walk past the old observation window that separates the morgue from the pathology hallway, it feels like something else is bouncing back at me. Something slower, something patient, not light, but attention. My name is Daniel. I'm 50 now. I used to work security at St. Alora's, nights mostly. I wasn't much for drama or conversation, and the graveyard shift suited me fine. Just keys, silence, and the occasional sleepy nurse nodding hello. I liked the solitude, or maybe I thought I did, before I realized I wasn't always alone. The observation window's been there forever, right outside the morgue doors. It was meant for doctors and interns to observe procedures discreetly, but no one uses it anymore. The blinds are always drawn, the lights dim. Still, I'd walk past it twice every shift on my rounds, and every time, even when I knew no one was inside, I felt it, that tug on the back of my neck, that quiet sensation of being watched. At first, I dismissed it. We all get creeped out near the morgue, the chill, the smell, the hush that settles around the door like a breath being held. But this was different. It wasn't the morgue that unsettled me. It was the window, the glass. It was always fogged up, always, Even in summer, even during HVAC upgrades, even when no bodies were being prepped, I'd walk by, see my shape blurred against the glass, and tell myself it was condensation, that maybe there was a temperature difference between the rooms. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that. It was too consistent, too deliberate. One night, I passed the window during my second round, around 2:45 a.m. The hall was quiet, not a soul in sight. The lights flickered above me like usual, humming soft, but the window, it was clear, crystal clear. I stopped, stared. On the other side, the morgue sat dim and empty. Nothing moved, no trays, no shadows, but someone was there. At first I thought it was a reflection, a trick of the light, a delay in my movement. But the figure didn't mimic me. It didn't shift when I shifted. It stood perfectly still, just a head and shoulders, faint gray, unmoving. I blinked, took a step back. The figure remained. I tried to convince myself it was one of the night techs, maybe Nora, tall and pale, always wearing that gray smock. But the figure didn't wear scrubs. It didn't wear anything I could describe, just darkness, a smudge of shadow standing behind the glass. And then it smiled, not wide, not grotesque, just enough to show it knew I was there. I left the hallway faster than I care to admit, didn't finish my round, sat in the security office, and tried to calm the drumbeat in my chest. The cameras didn't show anything unusual, but they never catch what matters, just time-stamped stillness. The next night, the fog was back. I walked slower this time, heart hammering. The glass was covered again, that familiar misty blur, but my reflection wasn't there. I stood directly in front of it. The lights were bright behind me. I should have seen myself, but there was nothing, just fog, and the faintest imprint of breath against the inside of the glass. I didn't tell anyone. What could I say? That a window forgot how to reflect, that a smudge smiled at me. I'm not some jumpy rookie. I've seen overdoses, code blues, even a stabbing once in the ER, but this was different. This wasn't trauma. It was attention, quiet, cold attention that stuck to my skin. I started skipping that hallway, adjusted my route, told myself it was a draft issue or faulty insulation, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That face, that absence where I should have been. Weeks passed. One night, after a long shift filled with false fire alarms and a combative patient in psych, I stayed late to file reports. The hospital was quiet, too quiet. I hadn't realized how loud silence could be until that night, how it fills the lungs like fog, how it sharpens every footstep. I had to walk past the morgue to get to the records office. I considered turning around, taking the long way, but something in me, maybe tiredness, maybe pride, said no. I turned the corner, eyes on the floor, hands tight in my jacket, and the window was lit. The lights inside the morgue were on, full and harsh. I could see everything. Trays, cabinets, a body bag on the central table. The blinds had been drawn open. I froze. The figure was back. Only this time, it wasn't behind the glass. It was in the reflection. My reflection. Except it wasn't me. It was standing where I was standing, dressed like me, head tilted just slightly wrong, and it was smiling again, a little wider now. I raised my hand. The reflection didn't move. I turned away. It stayed. I walked backwards slowly, step by step, until I reached the nurse's station and collapsed into a chair. No one else saw it. Of course not. No one else ever does. I didn't go back the next night. Called in sick, then took 2 weeks leave. They didn't question it, said I'd earned the time. Maybe they saw the dark under my eyes, the way I flinched at reflections. I came back eventually. Security needs bodies, even haunted ones. I asked to change shifts. Daylight, sunlight, warmth, but I still pass that window sometimes, when I forget or when I let my guard down. And every once in a while, even in the middle of the day, I swear I see fog on the glass. And sometimes when I look into a mirror at home, shaving, brushing my teeth, there's a flicker, not a shape, just a delay. Like my reflection is a beat too slow, like it's waiting for me to notice it's not me anymore. I think part of me got left behind that night, or maybe something crossed over. I don't know what it wants. It hasn't spoken. It hasn't moved beyond that smile. But I feel it watching, not just at work, everywhere. The back of my eyes, the corners of my screens, in moments of quiet, when the air grows too still. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I dream of that glass, endless, clean and cold, with me staring back, only I can't tell which side I'm on. And sometimes I wonder if that figure still stands there in the morgue, or if I do. Hospitals are full of rooms no one wants to talk about. Cold Room 9 is one of them. It sits at the end of the lower hallway, near the old mechanical lift that groans when it moves, even when it's empty. They say Room 9 was meant for overflow, backup storage for bodies when the main morgue reached capacity. But in all my years here, I've never seen anyone wheel a body into Room 9 without hesitating first. It's colder than the others. Even when the thermostat says 72, it feels like winter inside, not just cold, lonely. My name is Letty. I'm 61. I've been a charge nurse here for most of my life. I've trained more interns than I can count, and I've signed more death charts than I'd like to admit. I've learned how to carry grief without showing it. You have to, or it crushes you. But Room 9, it still gets under my skin. It happened during a storm 4 winters ago. Power outages are rare here. We've got a solid generator, but that night, something went wrong. A transformer blew. The emergency power kicked in late, and we lost refrigeration in the main morgue for nearly 6 hours. That might not sound like much, but we had 6 bodies in storage. One of them had to be moved. The body was that of an elderly woman, Jane Huxley. No known family, no visitors. She died quietly 2 days prior from complications after a fall. I remember because I was the one who sat with her after the code. I held her hand until it went still. She hadn't opened her eyes in hours, but I could have sworn she squeezed my fingers right before the monitor flatlined. With the main morgue down, we had to use Room 9. It was still functional, technically, though no one had stepped inside in months. Some said it was because of the flickering lights, others because the latch on the door stuck. I think people just had a feeling. I know I did. I wheeled Jane and myself. No one volunteered. The hallway was dim, the storm outside throwing shadows across the tile. I remember the silence, not peaceful, tense. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you're being watched, even when you're not. Room 9's cold hit me before I opened the door. It radiated through the walls. When I stepped inside, my breath fogged. The air was heavy, like a freezer, and the light overhead buzzed softly, flickering every few seconds. I parked the gurney, logged the temporary transfer, and left. I didn't look back. The next morning, the generator was repaired, and we moved the other bodies back into the main morgue. I went to retrieve Jane. She wasn't as I left her. Her body was covered, sheet drawn up to the neck. That was standard, but her hands, they were crossed neatly over her chest. We don't position them like that after transfer, especially not in cold overflow. We placed them flat at the sides, minimal handling, and yet there she was, laid out like she'd been prepared for viewing. Her toe tag was missing. The gurney's wheel lock had been engaged, something I hadn't done, and her face, her expression had changed. There was something calm about her, almost proud, like she'd been waiting for someone, or maybe like someone had come. I asked around. No one else admitted to entering Room 9. Security footage from the hallway showed nothing, just a black frame where the camera had gone dead during the outage. I checked the transfer logs again. Everything seemed in order. Everything, except the body didn't feel the same. I'd handled enough to know. There was no rigor, no cold stiffness, just softness, warmth. I had to pull my hand away. That night, I dreamed of her. She was standing in Room 9, dressed in the hospital gown she died in, hair down, eyes open. She said nothing, but her mouth moved like she was trying to speak, or maybe pray. Her hands were outstretched toward mine. Behind her, the gurney was gone. The walls were covered in ice, and the light buzzed, flickered, and then went out. I woke up gasping. I tried to laugh it off the next day. I blamed the stress, the storm, the cold, But I couldn't shake the dream. I kept seeing her face, her hands, that peaceful pose, that unnatural warmth. I started asking around about room 9's history. No one had much to say. A few whispered rumors. An old tech said the room had been used during a flu epidemic in the 1970s. Mass overflow storage, bodies kept there for days. Said sometimes families never came to claim them. Forgotten. That was the word he used. I went back to room 9 a week later. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe guilt. The door was still stiff, the handle colder than the surrounding air. I opened it and froze. The room was empty. No gurneys, no trays, no tools. But the air, it wasn't cold anymore. It was warm, still, heavy, like the room had exhaled. In the center of the floor was a single item, a folded hospital blanket, neatly arranged in a square. On top of it, a patient wristband. Jane Huxley. Her name faded, almost rubbed off. It hadn't been there when we moved her. I didn't touch it. I backed out slowly, heart pounding, shut the door, locked it. We stopped using room 9 after that. Told administration it needed maintenance. Sealed it off. No one argued. But some nights, especially during storms, I hear it, the soft creak of wheels turning down that hall, like a gurney being pushed. Slowly, steadily toward a room no one should enter. And sometimes, when I walk past that hallway, I swear I see light under the door, a soft glow, like someone's in there, waiting. A few weeks ago, a new nurse asked if we had extra sheets. I told her to check the linen cart. She came back holding a folded blanket she'd found on the floor near the morgue. It was the same one, same fold, same square. She said it was warm. I don't sleep well during the winter anymore. When it's quiet and the vents cycle down, I think of Jane, of that calm expression, of the hand I held in silence while her heart gave up. I wonder if she just wanted someone to stay, someone to wait with her. I still whisper hello when I pass room 9, not out of fear, out of respect. Some patients never get visitors, some rooms never forget their names, and some warmth doesn't come from heat at all. It comes from being seen, and I think Jane sees me, still. There's something about 4 a.m. in a hospital that stretches time. The fluorescent lights hum like they're getting tired too, and the hallways take on this waxy stillness, like everything's been dipped in silence. That's when time starts to feel like a loop, not linear, not forward, just circular, like the same second keeps happening over and over, trying to catch its breath. My name is Cole, I'm 37. I'm what they call a float nurse, the one who fills in when someone calls out or when a shift runs too long. I've worked in every wing of St. Aurora's, ICU, oncology, psyche. I've even done rotation in the morgue, nights mostly. I prefer them, fewer people, fewer conversations, but more shadows. It started 6 months ago when I picked up an overnight in the East Wing, the oldest part of the hospital. Most of it had been converted to storage or closed off completely, but a few patient rooms were still active for overflow. I was told I'd be covering 3 rooms. Quiet patients, stable vitals, easy night. I nodded, clocked in, did my rounds. The East Wing has a different feeling than the rest of the hospital. The tiles are scuffed deeper, the walls carry sound longer. It's like the place remembers things more than it should. The nurse's station is tiny, one flickering monitor, a dry whiteboard with a cracked marker, and an old analog clock that ticks too loud. I made my first round at 12:15. 3 patients, all asleep, all fine. I sat back down at the station, started charting. Then something strange happened. The monitor glitched. Not unusual. The equipment in East Wing is ancient. But this wasn't a normal flicker. The patient list refreshed and suddenly listed 4 names instead of 3. Room 214, unoccupied. But now, suddenly, it wasn't. A patient had been entered. Marin, Ler, female, 88. Status, post-op monitoring. I checked the print logs. No admit sheet. No file. I called Central. They said they didn't show any such patient in the system. They told me to ignore it, probably a database echo from an old admission. I wanted to believe them. I really did, but then I heard the call bell. Room 214. A soft chime, barely audible. I stared at the hallway. The light above the door was on. I stood, heart knocking in my ribs, and walked slowly down the corridor. The door was closed. No nameplate. I hesitated, then knocked. No answer. I opened the door. It was dark. The bed was empty, made up tightly. No movement. But the monitor, that ancient dusty heart monitor mounted to the wall, was on. Beeping. Steady. 54 BPM. I backed out and shut the door. I told myself I was tired, that maybe I'd misread something. I went back to the station, cleared the log, but when I checked the patient list again, room 214 was still there. Same name, same vitals. I waited for the end of the shift, like a man waits for morning after a nightmare, with hope and dread, all tangled up. When 7 a.m. rolled around, I logged out and left. Didn't say a word. I didn't take another shift in East Wing for weeks, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. About that empty room that wasn't. About that heartbeat. The second time it happened, I was covering a short-staffed ICU night. Around 3:10 a.m., I had to run labs down to the East Wing. They temporarily moved storage to a room near 2014. I tried not to look at the door when I passed, but I heard it. That beep. Soft, rhythmic. I stopped. I turned. The door was cracked open. I know I didn't touch it. I hadn't gone near it, but it stood there, open just enough to see the foot of the bed. And on that bed, a shape, still, covered. I blinked, stepped back, and the door slowly creaked shut. Not slammed, not forced, just gently, like someone pushing it with a fingertip. When I got back to the nurse's station, I checked the system again. Room 2114 was gone. 3 days later, I was called in for another East Wing overnight. I almost said no, but the nurse manager looked desperate, and I didn't have the heart to lie. So I clocked in. Room 2114 was empty again, they said. Don't worry about it, they said. Midnight came and went. At 2:37 a.m., the call bell rang. Room 2114, again. I walked to the door with my mouth dry and my fists clenched. This time, the light was already on inside. I opened it. There was someone in the bed, an elderly woman, eyes open, awake. She turned to me slowly and said, "You're late." I froze. She smiled. Her wristband read, Marin. L. I stepped closer, heart stuttering in my chest. She looked exactly like the patient file I'd pulled from the archived system the week before, the one I dug up after the first incident, thinking maybe there had been a patient by that name once. There had. She died in 1993. Same wing, same room, heart failure, age 88. Her smile faded, and she said, "Your shift isn't over. You just forgot how long it lasts." I stumbled back, hit the door frame. The lights flickered, then burst overhead. Darkness. When the lights came back, the bed was empty. No patient, no wristband, just the steady beep of a heart monitor that hadn't been turned on in decades. I left that night. Not just the wing, the hospital. I didn't go back for weeks. When I did, I requested day shifts only. Admin agreed, but that didn't stop the calls. Not phone calls, call bells. At 2:37 a.m. every night, even at home, I hear the chime. Sometimes soft, sometimes sharp, always that same sound, the one I heard when room 214 was first added back to the system. I moved once, thinking it would help. It didn't, because I don't think I left the East Wing. I think part of me is still there, walking those halls, checking those rooms, answering bells for patients that don't exist. Some nights I wake up in a sweat with my badge still on. My shift never ends. The clock in my bedroom ticks too loud, just like the one at the East Wing station. It always reads 2:37 when I open my eyes. I tried smashing it. It still ticks, still calls, still waits, and every so often, when I close my eyes, I hear her voice again. "You're late." And I wonder if she was right. Maybe I never left that room. Maybe none of us ever really do.